And Kegels aren't always the solution, and you may know that because you may have tried Kegels and your symptoms actually got worse. If you are struggling with leaking and you have a loose mommy tummy, I want to show you how that's connected. Okay. So I want you to kind of assess where your hip bones will be here on the side. Now pretend as though you're trying to bring them together. Okay. Find those hip bones just around about where they are. Now pretend as though you're literally trying to bring them together. Tighten that lower area up. Hold it for a few seconds if you can. Now before you relax it, I want you to sense what your pelvic floor is doing. Relax it. Did you feel your pelvic floor release when you released your abs? Okay, here's another analogy I want you to kind of, or a visual I want you to try to do. Pretend as though to engage the deep core, the transverse abdominis, the one that wraps around and cinches you in. Pretend as though you're putting on a tight pair of jeans, okay? And you try to button them, and you try to zip up the zipper without getting your skin or anything down there caught, okay? Hold that, 5 seconds. Now I want you to tune into your pelvic floor. Now relax your stomach. What did your pelvic do? Your pelvic floor do? Did you feel that relaxed? Did you feel it relaxed? Okay, Jen, I felt it. All right, awesome. Jen is with me, y'all. Is it co-contracts with your pelvic floor. So what happens is when you're contracting, yes, Geneva, digital marketing felt it. Yes, okay, awesome. We're not alone. That's because it co-contracts your mommy tummy and the pelvic floor, they contract together. And when you're doing, let's say, a Kegel, a proper Kegel is where you kind of would squeeze, but then you also lift. Okay, that's how a Kegel works. And then you lower and you relax. Now, to get that full Kegel, to get a full Kegel, when you grab, let's pretend, and this is the analogy I use with my ladies in my programs. So pretend as though you're grabbing a marble with your lady parts and you're lifting it up. Now lower it back down and fully release it. Okay? That's a full Kegel. A lot of times people are just focusing on squeezing, 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 but you're picking like a blueberry up or a marble. You're lifting it up, then you lower it down and you fully release it. You fully open up, you fully relax, okay? Now, to get that lift, your lower abs have to be strong. Your abs actually help give you that full lift. So if you don't have strong abs, you're not able to get that lift. And that could be in part, that's the connection between your mommy tummy and your pelvic floor. That's why it's so important to get your core rehabbed and nice and strong again because they're connected. And when I work with my ladies and do exercises for our mommy tummy to strengthen it and tighten it, we also include the pelvic floor because they're connected and it's important to work them both together. Okay. Now, let's get to the meat of this talk that I really wanted to talk about today. I had to kind of lead up to it with that introduction. If you missed any of that, it'll be on my YouTube video Friday. Well, I'm probably going to cut to this part. But I talk about what I just talked about, I talk about a lot. And if you check out the previous videos, I've talked about pelvic floor, and I think I even did that exercise. So check out last Friday's, because I think I even talked more in depth than I talked today. Okay? So, but I want to get into the meat of this conversation, and what I really want to discuss are these Kegels. How to know if you should be doing them or if you should not be doing them. Because a lot of us think that we should be doing them. If we have leaking, we think that we should, or somebody has said, hey, you have leaking, you should, but that's not always the case. And so I want to kind of give you some tips to know if you should or should not be doing them. So there are two things that can be going on with your pelvic floor after baby, okay? You can have either a hypertonic pelvic floor or hypotonic pelvic floor. Okay, so a hypotonic pelvic floor is where everything is weak or the connection, like when we have a baby, the baby goes through and the muscles down there, everything gets very stretched out. Everything kind of lengthens a bit, okay? One way the body responds to that is everything is just lengthened and loose. Um, if you feel like everything is lengthened and loose, if you kind of just relax your pelvic floor and you feel like everything might be about to fall out, or you feel like you can't hold a Kegel very long, it's just too weak and everything just kind of won't, you have a hard time gathering up and lifting, if you have a hard time doing that and holding that for 5 to 10 seconds, then you might be you would be hypotonic. It could be weak, or there could just be a nerve disconnect where um, everything's been so lengthened, and as a result of the labor and delivery, that the connections just aren't there, and we have to kind of reconnect. Now, for somebody like that, you may experience leaking. Okay. Now, if your muscles are very weak and you can't gather things together, lift up, if you're having a struggle with that, then Kegels would be great for you because you might need to one reconnect to the pelvic floor, or two, you might need to build strength down there. Okay. Now, if you start doing Kegels and in about a week or so you feel like your symptoms are getting worse, that would be a sign that that is not your problem. You do not have a hypotonic pelvic floor, but you have a hypertonic pelvic floor where things are tight and tense. And with tight and tense or loose and weak, you can have leaking with both of those situations. So that's why it's important to know, like, just because you're leaking doesn't mean you need Kegels. It could mean if you have a hypertonic where everything's tight down there all the time, it might mean that you need to kind of relax. Okay, so hypertonic, how can we break this down? Because I want to make sure this makes sense. I'm using some random words here that we don't use every day. Hypertonic is like for those of us who might hold stress in our shoulders. When you feel like a tense, tight shoulders, it's like kind of tight and tense. There are trigger spots in there. It's holding muscle tone. Even when you try to fully relax, you can't. Okay, that's kind of like a situation. That's like a hypertonic um, um, pelvic floor. Okay, so if you have tension there, like even right now, check in with your pelvic floor. If you're tense, or if you're stressed right now or anything, sometimes we can just hold that tension in our pelvic floor as opposed to our neck or our shoulders. Some people just hold tension down there. So that could be one cause of a tight pelvic floor. But not only that, when we have babies, sometimes when the baby is delivered vaginally, even that, the body, instead of responding by loosening and weakening, sometimes the body responds by tightening after having a baby. I know it sounds really weird, but sometimes it happens. Um, so if you have a hypertonic pelvic floor where you hold tension in there, then that would be a case of no Kegels. That would be a time to relax, learn to inhale deep down, relax, see a pelvic floor physical therapist. I have a pelvic floor physical therapist that works with the ladies in my programs. Some people may need manual releasing, stretching, the happy baby pose, child pose. Also, we would want to find out what's causing that tightness. Is it stress? Is it that you're doing too many Kegels already? Sometimes just doing too many Kegels can cause us to be tight. It could be that after baby, we didn't tighten up the other muscles surrounding the pelvic floor. Like your glutes need to be strong for a good pelvic floor. Your adductors need to be strong for a good pelvic floor. Your tummy, your mommy tummy has to be strong for a healthy pelvic floor. If those accessory muscles aren't strong, then your pelvic floor feels like it needs to be tight. So it'll be important to strengthen all of those muscles surrounding. Okay. So the takeaway here is if you can't gather your pelvic floor, lift it up and hold that for 5 to 10 seconds, you feel like it's weak or it's difficult to gather, you might need Kegels. But here's the thing, if you start doing Kegels the way I described it earlier, because you want to do a full Kegel, a proper Kegel where you're gathering together, you're lifting up, you're lowering back down, you're fully relaxing. Full relaxation is very important, okay? If when you do those, if you do those for a week or two and you start noticing a worsening of symptoms, your pelvic floor is most likely tight and you have to work on releasing first, figuring out the cause, figuring out what the reason is, and then you work on strengthening after you have figured out how to relax. Okay, so that's what I wanted to leave with you today. Let me just kind of check with these questions. I have hyper, I see that. Little red, yes. I think having a hypertonic pelvic floor is becoming more common. Um, for different reasons. Kegels don't do a thing. Jessica, yes. For a lot of us, I think Kegels sometimes are done improperly, so that's why it may not be working. And then we're also not considering that we could have a tight pelvic floor and not a weak pelvic floor, or not a very low tone pelvic floor. Because you can have a tight pelvic floor and have a weak or a strong pelvic floor. You can have a loose pelvic floor and still it could be not be weak. It could just be loose and needing to kind of reconnect to those nerves. So having a tight pelvic floor or a looser pelvic floor doesn't necessarily mean one is automatically weak or strong. Both of them could be weak or strong depending on the person. So it's really good to kind of assess all these different things before you just go throwing around Kegels at people. All right, that's all I have to say today. I'll be back on Friday. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about this week, but if you're interested in things like this, a lot of the lives I've done are posted on my YouTube channel. Also, I have a full list of free exercises to get you started rehabbing your core. You can check out the link in my bio.